Uh, Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible to you. Let me share my screen. Good morning, everyone. I hope my screen is visible to you. Am I audible to you? Kindly confirm with a quick yes or no. Great. So let's continue our discussion on the constructor and the initializers and the static block. So we have a class called a student, okay, continuation of it. There is a constructor student, okay, which takes two parameter, int and string. There is another constructor called a student, which takes three parameters. One is int, another is string, and third one is int, okay. The first one is taking two parameters. The third one is the second constructor is taking three parameters, okay. So two or more function having the same name taking different number of arguments is called function overloading. Two or more function, in this case this one and this one, okay, having the same name, both are having the same name as student, taking different number of arguments. Here there are two, here there are three, all different types of argument. For example, first one is int string, second one is two integer or something like that, is called function overloading. Is called function overloading. There is a display function which is displaying the id, name and the age, which is displaying the id, name and the age, okay. Now in the first case, what is happening? I am saying student s1 is equal to new student 1 comma abc. So what I am doing, class name, reference variable, new is used to create. This is a constructor. I am passing to parameter 1 comma abc. So it will come to this particular constructor which is there coded on the line number 6. It takes two parameter. Here also we have two parameter. The first one is int, the first one is int, the second one is string, the second one is string. So those I and n will be assigned to id and the name. In the second case, I'm creating an object student s2 is equal to new student 2 xyz and 25. So what is 2 in this case? 2, there are three parameters. So do we have a constructor with 3? Yes. The first is integer, the second is string, the third is integer. So let's see whether we have it. First is integer, second is string, third is integer. Yes, they do match over here. So I'll be assigning I and an a to id, name and age. Okay. There is a display function which is displaying the id, name and age. So when I compile and run the code, okay, what will happen in the first case is it will display the ID and the name, okay, that is 1 ABC. The display function also displays something called as a age, and by default we know that a data member will be initialized to 0. So that 0 will be displayed over here. In the next case, what I am doing, I am saying student s2 is equal to new student 2 xyz 25. So when I say s2 dot display, it is going to display 2 as id, name will be xyz and age will be 25. So what you learned in this particular example was the concept of a function overloading. Two or more function having the same name, okay, taking different number of parameters or different type of parameter is called function overloading. If you have any doubts, I'll wait and you could raise it over here in this example if you have any doubt. I'll wait for a minute, then I'll continue with the next example. Looks like there is no doubt, so let's continue. One moment. Command line argument is the argument which is provided at the you run a code, and it is stored in this particular argument, string arguments. Okay. We'll be discussing this, don't worry. There is a class main. And let's remove this. There is a class student. There is a parameterized constructor entire and string n. Entire and string n. Okay, there is a class student having ID and the name. There is a parameterized constructor. There is a display function. There is a display function. Okay, and here in the SOP I display ID and the name. Now in the first case, in the class main, what I'm doing, I'm creating object called as S1 with two parameters 1, ABC. In the next case, what I am doing, I am not at all passing any argument. So now when I make a call to S1.display, it is straightforward. It should display ID and the name. And when I create a second object in which I am not passing any argument, what should be displayed by that S2.display? By that S2.display. So let's run the code again and see what happens when you compile the code. When you compile the code, okay, I will first show you the example. There is a class student with ID name. There is a parameterized constructor. There is a display function. We created two objects. Okay, student S1 is equal to new student 1, ABC. So do we have a constructor? Yes, we do have a constructor. I'm saying student S2 is equal to new student. Okay, we haven't passed any argument, so I have not written any constructor. So as I say S1.display and S2.display. When I compile the code, what happens is it complains saying that you haven't provided the constructor for this particular constructor. That is, a default constructor is not mentioned. Default constructor is not mentioned. Okay, so this particular line will grumble, will complain saying that you have provided the parameterized constructor, but you haven't provided the default constructor. So it won't be executed. So it will give a problem at this particular line saying that I cannot create an object. So what you should do is, you should do something like this. Student, opening bracket, and just write down this default constructor. Don't do anything in that. Just write the default constructor. And now compile the code again. And now compile the code again. Now you will get 1 ABC. 1 ABC, why? Because you passed 1 and ABC. So control came to SOP, displayed 1 and ABC. In the next case, you created an object. So it went into the default constructor. We didn't do anything, but it should be there. And then when I display the contents, what will happen? It will display the ID as 0 and the name as null. Is it clear to you? So what we learned in this example was, the moment you provide the parameterized constructor, default constructor will not be provided. Default constructor will not be provided. Is the concept clear? The moment I write or we write a parameterized constructor, the default constructor is not provided. Is it clear? What do you mean by this default constructor is not provided? Let's remove this. Let's remove this. Okay. Let's remove this also. And let's make this as a comment. Okay. Pay attention again. Important concept is this. There is a class student with ID name. There is a display function. There is no parameterized constructor. There is absolutely no constructor in this example. And my code says student S2 is equal to new student. Student S2 is equal to new student. And then I say S2.display. Will the program run? Yes, no. What is your call? Will the program run? Yes or no? Yes, the program runs. So what is the thumb rule? If you haven't written any constructor, then the compiler will provide a default constructor. It will execute without any hitch. So if I run the code, what should happen? It will give me 0 and null. Absolutely no problem. It came here, display the ID and the name, which is 0 and null. No problem. But the moment you provide something like this, you create an object with a parameterized constructor, okay? Then it is mandatory for you to write a default constructor. The moment you write this, then you have to write this code. Is it clear to you? There is no need to write a default constructor if you have not written any parameterized constructor. But if you have written a parameterized constructor, then you are compulsory required to write a default constructor. Is it clear? Okay. What I want you to do, I want you to write a class called as myRectangle. Okay, it should have the two data members, width and height. Okay, this should be initialized using default constructor and parameterized constructor. Okay, you should write a function for display area. You should write a function for display area. That means there will be something called as class myRectangle. Okay, what you are going to have? You are going to have two data members, width and height. There is going to be a default constructor in which you are going to accept the value for width and height. There is a parameterized constructor in which you will assign the value to width and height. There is a class rectangle over here. Okay, I will write down the class main. In the class main, what I have? We're going to have a public static void main, in which what I'm going to do? obj1 equal to new myRectangle. I'm going to create a default constructor. Here I'm going to say myRectangle obj2 equal to, I'm going to pass certain values 3, 7. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a call to a function called as display area. That means it should return the area. System dot out dot line obj1 dot display area. This will be obj dot display area. So you have to write two constructors. One is default and another is parameterized, and you have to write a code for display area which is going to return the area. Complete this particular class. So let me check the code if someone has written. Double width, double height constructor, default parameterized display area, your returning area, main, and obj1, obj2 default. Dhruv, in case of default, you are supposed to accept the data. You haven't done it. Kindly write the code for this particular constructor. Let me check some other solution. Kindly write the code for the default constructor. You are supposed to accept the data for length and breadth. Akshit, in the default, you are supposed to accept it. You are not supposed to keep it blank. And this particular function should return the value. This function should return the value. See, area is not displayed in that class. Area is displayed over here. The display area function should return it. Kindly pay attention. The default constructor should accept the data for length and breadth. Point number one. Point number two, area shouldn't be displayed in the class. Area should be returned. So it should be displayed over here. Okay, time's up. You haven't written the code. You're supposed to complete this particular code. You're supposed to accept the data in the constructor in the default, which you haven't done. That's why I asked you the question. I knew that you would be getting this particular error. So I want you to solve that particular question. How you are going to solve it? See, what I told you was
सर कुछ बोल रहे हैं, नहीं चल रहा। ओए 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 नहीं 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 भेजनी नहीं किसी को। काई अच्छी है। ये तो आर्यन को पहाड़ी सिखा रही है। चलो स्टूडेंट्स हैं, फ्री की सिखा रही हूँ, आपको सीखने तो बोल लेना, सिखाइए मुझे आ गया। कई बार हिंदी बोलती हूँ ना, पहाड़ी एक्सेंट आ जाता है बीच में। शिवांश है ना साथ हमारे, वो सारा दिन वही बोलता है। हैं? वो वहाँ का है, सुंदर नगर का। मंडी सुंदर नगर। एक्सेंट तो पंजाबी वाला करी है, ये पहाड़ी वाला। मतलब जैसे बोल रही है अभी, मतलब सेंस वैसे लगते है जैसे पंजाबी बोल रही है। किसका फोन है ये? हेलो हेलो, कौन है? हेलो मैंने सुबह नाश्ता भी नहीं किया ढंग से।